you find out life's this game of inches. So is football. Because in either game, life or football, the margin for error is so small. I mean, one half a step too late or too early, and you don't quite make it. 1/2 second too slow, too fast, you don't quite catch it. The inches we need are everywhere around us.
Welcome into the Gibson Fantasy Football Podcast. We are back with the first off-season episode of 2023. Woo-hoo. Joining you here on Saturday, March 11th. I am missing my flag, as you may notice. So it's in repair, but it'll be back at some point. Don't worry. And we're here to break down the Bears trading the number one pick last night. So huge move. Excited to get into that. But before we do that, you can find us at GibsonFantasyFootball.com, Gibson_FF on Twitter, Gibson Fantasy Football, all one word, Instagram, YouTube, Podbean, or Spotify. All right, let's dig in. So the Bears traded the number one pick to the Carolina Panthers, and let's walk through the details. So the Panthers gave up the number 9 pick, the number 61 pick, so a first and a second this year, their first round pick next year, and their second round pick in 2025. So in terms of draft capital, they gave up 4 picks, 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and the first this year obviously is the number 9. The first last year, we don't know what that'll be. That'll depend on how bad the Panthers are, which at the moment it's looking like pretty bad. So I'd expect that to be at least a top 15 pick, if not maybe even a top 10 pick, depending on how bad they are. And then the cherry on top really is DJ Moore. So massive implications there for him, which we'll kind of break down a little bit more here in a minute. But yeah, huge move there. So the Bears get quite the haul. I think they're the clear winners of the trade. I don't necessarily think that the Panthers are the losers per se, but time will tell whether or not it was worth it to go get what could be a franchise quarterback, which we know are damn near impossible to find. So we'll see how that pans out for them. Now, let's take a look at where that leaves folks in terms of draft picks. So the Bears are in a great spot. They've got the 9 pick, the 53rd, 61st, and 64th pick. So they got 4 picks inside the top 64. So after they take that high-end player at 9, they got 3 more in the second round there. Alternatively, they could package some of those picks along with, other picks that they have and move around in the draft if they feel like there's someone specific they want to go get, which I wouldn't be surprised if they move up or down a couple of spots throughout the first 2 rounds. So they're left with, plenty of ammunition this year. So they got those 4 picks. And then, like I said, they'll get the extra first next year. So they'll have 2 firsts. And then they'll have an extra second in 2025. So lots of capital for them. The Panthers, on the other hand, they do still have 3 good picks. So they lost their number 9, but they got the number 1 overall, which is obviously what matters the most. They've still got pick 39 and then 93. So 39 is a real good one, just at the top of the second round there. 93, not as good, but still, you're going to get a decent player at that point. Could be, running back, could be defense, offensive line. There's some different folks that could be kicking around at that point in the draft, but that does make sense for a running back or a tight end if that was something they were looking to address, which tight end is probably the more needy position at that point. Okay, so we've got an idea of what was exchanged, what everybody's got left at this point. So let's jump into, who are they going to draft, right? So the fun part for the Panthers is that they get whoever they want, right? So number 1 pick in the draft, we know it's going to be a quarterback. So it's just a matter of who. So there's 4 potential quarterbacks going in the draft that are figuring to go, somewhere within at least the top 15, maybe the top 10, maybe even the top 7. So those are CJ Stroud, Bryce Young, Will Levis, and Anthony Richardson. So it looks like CJ Stroud is the front runner at this point for the Panthers in terms of who he is, his size, his production profile, his ability to jump in and be a year one starter. All of that seems to fit well with what Carolina has going on. Remember that hired Frank Reich here in the offseason to be their new coach after firing Matt Rule. They also brought in Jim Caldwell and Josh McCown. So they got a lot of quarterback-friendly personnel in their group there that could really make it an attractive destination for a quarterback and a good opportunity for them to develop someone, fairly quickly, right? Maybe not a superstar in year one, but certainly by year two, even year three at the latest, they could be making a pretty big impact in the league. So that's the prediction there. They're going to take CJ Stroud and make him their franchise quarterback and then go from there, building around him, which is going to be a little tricky because they don't have too many big picks. So expect them to be active in free agency. There's folks like Adam Thielen were released. You got Juju out there on the market technically, but he's probably going to KC. You've got Odell Beckham, who just held a workout for folks. You got Jacoby Myers. So there's a handful of decent options. Nobody the caliber of DJ Moore. So they would have to make a trade if that was the case, and that doesn't really fit with what their objective is this season. So expect them to add a few, quality depth receivers, but they're mostly going to play off of what they have, I suspect. On the flip side, it's the Bears is an interesting one. So it's a lot less clear as to who they're going to take with that number 9 pick. To go from 1, where you can literally take anybody you want, to 9 means that there has to be 9 players that you're comfortable with. So who those are is going to depend. As I mentioned, the 4 quarterbacks are very likely to go in the top at least 15, maybe 10. And it's possible, and this is probably what the Bears are banking on because there's several QB needing teams at the top, is that 4 of those first 8 picks ahead of them are quarterbacks. And so if that's the case, then when you get past those 4 quarterbacks, I wouldn't say they'd be taking 1, 2, 3, 4, obviously, but if you put them aside in those first 8 picks, then you're looking at edge rusher Will Anderson, potentially defensive tackle Jalen Carter, depending on where teams are comfortable taking him. There's 2 more edge rushers, Tyree Wilson and Nolan Smith. There's the top corner back in the draft, Christian Gonzalez. There's a few different offensive tackles, Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson, there's a few others there. Devin Witherspoon is a highly ranked cornerback. So those are just, some of the names that you might see fly off the board in those other 4 picks. So the Bears likely have their eye on one of those individuals or someone that's in that area of the draft that's kind of mocked to go in that spot. So certainly they have needs at offensive line. They have needs on the defense at defensive tackle. So could be any of those picks. So it'll be interesting to see who they add there. And then, like I said, whether they move up or down in the draft. All right. Fantasy-wise, what does this mean? Well, it's great news for Justin Fields. He comes out the clear winner in this situation. He dealt with Darnell Mooney, who missed a good chunk of the season. He dealt with Cole Kmet, who's good as a tight end, but he can't lead a team or a receiving corps. He's no, Kelsey or Kittle or anything like that. They traded for Chase Claypool, which, it's going to go down as a mistake to give up a second for him, especially because it ended up being a very high second with the number 1 pick. So they really don't have much for Fields to be working with. And so bringing in DJ Moore gives him a legitimate number 1 option. I don't consider DJ Moore the caliber of some of the other players we've seen, like A.J. Brown, Stephon Diggs, DeAndre Hopkins, Tyreek Hill, Devontae Adams. So we've seen these superstar wide receivers go to a team and succeed and immediately make that quarterback better. Maybe not so much Adams with Carr because we kind of already knew what Carr was, but some of these younger quarterbacks really helped with their development. Tua and Jalen Hurts and Josh Allen and so on there. So I think it's a huge upgrade for Fields, but I don't think that DJ Moore is necessarily in a massively better situation. I think it's probably neutral to slightly better than being with the Panthers. I think it's better in terms of the offense is going to be better than the Carolina offense would have been this year. They're going to score more touchdowns. They're going to win more games, and they're trying to compete now and get into the playoffs in a division that is looking a lot more wide open, especially if Aaron Rodgers is on his way out, which is clearly what's rumored these days to the Jets. So great news for Fields. Slight bump for DJ Moore, maybe goes up a couple spots, but he's still like a mid wide receiver too, in that top 20 range. I don't think he gets to the top 15. We'll have to see kind of what other dominoes fall between now and, the September, so to speak, or even just after the draft. So yeah. And then on the Panthers side, I mean, they got nothing at receiver. You're talking about guys like Laviska Shenault and Shi Smith and, players that have been kind of journeymen for the most part. So we'll see if any of them can make much of an impact. But yeah, probably good news for the running backs more so, depending on who they have there. Right now, it's Chuba Hubbard and Deonta Foreman. So Hubbard profiles as more of the receiving back. All right, the last piece to cover here. So what does this do for the 2023 draft? So it takes away the possibility of the number one pick being traded now. So, I mean, there's some folks who think maybe the Carolina would move out of there, but they paid so much to get there. It doesn't make sense to then go ahead and give up that number one pick. They obviously want their franchise quarterback, and it's a good strategy is to try to get the franchise quarterback. You don't get too many shots to take the number one overall pick. Sometimes you don't ever get that shot. So they're, in my opinion, not trading out of there. So that means that the number one pick, the number two pick with the Texans, because they're not moving either, the top two quarterbacks are going off the board there. We could still see some movement with the Arizona Cardinals at 3. We got the Colts at 4. So we'll see, they're likely to invest in a quarterback. The Cardinals could trade out of there to a team like the Raiders or someone who's interested in getting up there to get a quarterback. So we might still see some shuffling there, depending on how quickly the quarterbacks go off the board. But that's the biggest impact, is that the number one and number two picks are not going anywhere. So the best you could get up to is 3, which means you're looking at likely Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. So we'll see what happens between now and then. Be back if there's any more shakeups or big trades or big moves. But as of right now, that's the biggest domino to fall in the offseason. And that's what we're looking at. So, I mean, congrats to Bears fans and the Bears themselves. I think that was a fantastic move. And I think they've now surrounded Justin Fields with at least one really adequate, talented weapon. And so that offense is looking a lot better. And I'm excited for Fields in 2023 here. All right. As always, if you've got any questions or comments, come find us. And until next time, clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose.